My mother-in-law announced on day 1 of our vacation that she invited my husband's ex to make things more fun. I stood there holding a bag of groceries on the deck of the beach house we'd rented for the week. The same beach house I'd spent 3 months researching, budgeting for, coordinating schedules around. My daughter was napping inside. My husband Dean was unpacking the car, and his mother was smiling at me like she'd just announced she'd brought extra towels. "You invited Bree?" I said slowly, setting down the groceries before I dropped them. "Bree, who dated him for 4 years? That Bree? Oh, don't be so dramatic." She waved her hand dismissively, adjusting her sunglasses. "She's like family. Always has been. She'll be here tomorrow afternoon." My stomach dropped. I pulled Dean aside the moment his mother went inside. "Did you know about this?" His face told me everything. "Mom probably just feels bad for her," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Bree's been going through a rough divorce. She needed a getaway. I'd been married to this man for 6 years. We had a 3-year-old daughter, and his mother still couldn't let go of the perfect girlfriend who got away. The thing is, I knew this vacation was a setup from the start. My mother-in-law had been making comments for months. Little comparisons that landed like paper cuts. Bree used to make the best apple pie. Bree never minded when we dropped by unannounced. Bree understood that Dean's family always comes first. I'd smile through gritted teeth, change the subject, and swallow the anger. Bree arrived the next day in a white convertible, wearing a sundress that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage. She hugged everyone like she'd never left, like the past 6 years hadn't happened. My mother-in-law actually teared up. "It's been too long, sweetie. You look absolutely amazing." Dean hugged her too. A beat too long. For the next 2 days, I watched them relive every inside joke, every family vacation Bree had attended, every story that started with, "Remember when Bree?" My daughter asked why the pretty lady was at our vacation. "She's an old friend of Daddy's," I said, though friend felt generous. That night, I found them all looking through old photo albums. Photos I'd never seen. Dean and Bree at Christmas. Dean and Bree at his college graduation. Dean and Bree everywhere. By day 3, I'd had enough. I woke up early, packed my daughter's things quietly, and loaded the car. Dean found me as I was buckling her into her car seat. "Where are you going?" he asked, genuinely confused. "Home," I said. "You can stay here with your real family." I drove 4 hours back to our house. My phone exploded with texts. Dean saying I was overreacting, his mother calling me selfish and immature. Even his sister chimed in about how I was ruining everything. I ignored them all. What I didn't ignore was the text I got that night from Dean's brother's wife, the one who'd been silent the whole trip. She sent me a photo. It was Dean and Bree, sitting on the beach at sunset, his arm around her shoulders, my mother-in-law in the background, smiling like she'd orchestrated the whole thing. The text read, "I think you should see this. There's more." I stared at my phone as 3 more photos loaded. Dean and Bree having coffee alone on the deck at sunrise. Dean helping her apply sunscreen on her back. Dean laughing at something she said while my daughter played in the sand by herself. Forgotten. The final text came through. "Your mother-in-law told Bree that you and Dean are having problems. She said you're planning to leave him. She's been setting this up for months." My hands started shaking. I called my sister-in-law immediately. She answered on the first ring. "I recorded some of their conversations," she said quietly. "You need to hear what they've been saying about you behind closed doors." She sent me the first audio file at 9:47 p.m. I sat in my dark living room, my daughter asleep upstairs, and pressed play. My mother-in-law's voice came through first, crystal clear. "The problem with her is she's never understood what this family needs. Bree got it. Bree knew her place." Dean's sister laughed. "Remember how she used to organize all the family photos? And she never complained about helping with holidays." "Exactly," my mother-in-law continued. "This one acts like she's doing us a favor just showing up. And the way she parents that child, so strict. Bree would have been the perfect mother." My throat tightened. The recording continued. "I'm telling you, if Dean had just waited another month, Bree would have come back to him. She made a mistake marrying that idiot. Now she's free, and Dean's stuck. Stuck. That's what I was to them. An inconvenient obstacle." The second recording was worse. It was from earlier that day after I'd left. Bree's voice, syrupy sweet. "I really appreciate you inviting me. I know it's awkward." "Nonsense," my mother-in-law said. "You belong here. You've always belonged here. And between you and me, I don't think their marriage is going to last much longer anyway. She's so cold to him, so controlling." "I noticed that," Bree said. "He seems miserable." "He is miserable, but he's loyal to a fault. Someone needs to show him there are other options." Dean's voice cut in. I held my breath. "Mom, that's not fair. She's not that bad. Not that bad." My husband's rousing defense of me. "Dean, honey, you deserve to be happy," his mother said. "Look at how happy you are right now with Bree here. Look at how natural this feels." Silence. He didn't disagree. "Just keep an open mind," his mother continued. "That's all I'm asking. Keep an open mind about what your life could look like." The recording ended. I sat there for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. Then my sister-in-law called again. "There's more," she said. "But I wanted to make sure you were okay first." "Send them all," I told her. "I need to know everything." Over the next hour, she sent me 6 more recordings. My mother-in-law discussing how to slowly push me out of family events. Dean's sister suggesting they stop inviting me to group chats. Bree talking about how she'd always loved Dean, how divorcing her husband was the best decision she ever made, how she'd be willing to wait for him. The final recording was from that afternoon. My daughter's voice, small and confused. "Where's Mommy?" "Mommy had to leave, sweetie," my mother-in-law said. "But don't worry, Miss Bree is going to play with you instead. I want Mommy." "Well, Mommy left you here. But we're going to have so much fun, aren't we?" My daughter started crying. I could hear Bree trying to soothe her, trying to act like a replacement mother. And then Dean's voice, frustrated. "Mom, maybe you should call her. Tell her to come back." "Absolutely not. She made her choice. Let her stew in it." I turned off my phone, sat in the darkness. Let the rage build. By morning, I had a plan. First, I called a divorce attorney, got an emergency consultation for that afternoon, explained everything, sent her the recordings and the photos. She listened carefully, making notes. Indiana is a no-fault divorce state, she said, but these recordings establish a pattern of emotional abuse and alienation. We can use this. What about custody? I asked. With evidence that his family is actively trying to replace you as a mother and that your husband is allowing it, I like our chances. I spent $3,000 that day. Retainer, filing fees, and a private investigator to document anything else I might need. Dean came home 2 days later. I'd barely slept. My daughter was at my sister's house. He walked in with his suitcase, looking exhausted. Can we talk about this? He said. Sure, I replied. Let's talk about how your mother told your ex-girlfriend that our marriage is failing. Let's talk about how you let Bree put sunscreen on your back while our daughter played alone. Let's talk about how you told your mother I'm not that bad when she was trashing me. His face went white. How did you— Your brother's wife, I said. The only decent person in your family. She recorded everything. You can't record people without their consent. Indiana is a one-party consent state. I cut him off. She was part of the conversation. It's completely legal. I already checked with my lawyer. Your lawyer? He looked panicked now. You got a lawyer? I filed for divorce this morning. You're being served at work tomorrow. He stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish. You're overreacting, he finally managed. Nothing happened with Bree. We were just catching up. You let your mother invite your ex-girlfriend on our family vacation without telling me. You let them trash me behind my back. You let Bree play mommy to our daughter while I drove home alone. And your big defense of me was that I'm not that bad. I didn't know what to say, he protested. Mom was being difficult. Your mom is always difficult. And you always choose her over me. He sat down heavily on the couch. So what? That's it? 6 years of marriage and you're just done? I'm not the one who gave up on this marriage, I said quietly. You did that the moment you let Bree walk through that door. The next 3 weeks were brutal. Dean moved in with his parents, which told me everything I needed to know about his priorities. My mother-in-law called me 17 times. I didn't answer. She showed up at my house twice. I called the police the second time and filed for a restraining order. My lawyer was thrilled. This is going to look great in court, she said. Dean's family hired their own attorney, some friend of a friend who went to law school with Dean's father. He tried to intimidate me during our first mediation session, called me hysterical, said I was weaponizing my daughter. My lawyer smiled sweetly and played the recordings. The room went silent. Dean's attorney looked at his notes, then at Dean, then back at his notes. We'd like a recess, he said. During the break, Dean pulled me aside. I didn't know she was planning all that, he said. I swear, I didn't know. But you went along with it. I was trying to keep the peace. You chose their peace over my dignity. She's my mother, and I'm your wife. I was your wife. He looked broken. Part of me felt bad. The part that had loved him for 6 years, that had built a life with him, that had given him a daughter. But that part was smaller now, buried under betrayal and humiliation. Is there anything I can do? He asked. To fix this? You could start by telling your mother she's never seeing our daughter again. I can't do that. Then no, there's nothing you can do. We went back to mediation. His attorney tried to argue for joint custody. My attorney presented evidence of emotional manipulation, parental alienation attempts, and family toxicity. The mediator looked uncomfortable. Mr. Holloway, she said carefully, did you know your mother was recording conversations about replacing your wife as your daughter's mother? She wasn't trying to replace. She told your daughter that her mother had abandoned her, while her mother was 4 hours away. That's textbook parental alienation. Dean shifted in his seat. She was just upset. She was manipulating a 3-year-old child, the mediator said. And you were present when it happened. You didn't stop it. Silence. I'm recommending supervised visitation only until Mr. Holloway can demonstrate he's willing to prioritize his daughter's emotional well-being over his family's preferences. Dean's attorney objected, loudly. It didn't matter. The recommendation went into the official report. 3 weeks later, we went before a judge. My mother-in-law showed up wearing all black like she was attending a funeral. Bree had the nerve to come too, sitting in the back row. My lawyer immediately filed a motion to have her removed from the courtroom. She has no legal relationship to this case, my lawyer argued, and her presence is inflammatory given the evidence we've submitted. The judge agreed. Bree left, shooting me a look that would have killed me if looks could actually kill. The proceedings took 4 hours. My lawyer presented everything, the recordings, the photos, the timeline of events, character witnesses who testified that I was a devoted mother and that Dean's family had always been controlling. Dean's lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, said I was using our daughter as a weapon, said I was alienating Dean from his child. My lawyer stood up. Your Honor, the respondent allowed his mother to tell their 3-year-old daughter that her mother had abandoned her. He allowed his ex-girlfriend to play substitute parent. He failed to defend his wife when his family discussed plans to push her out of the family. These aren't allegations. We have recordings. If anyone is weaponizing this child, it's the respondent and his family. The judge reviewed his notes. Looked at Dean, looked at me. I've reviewed all the evidence presented here today, he said, and I'm troubled by what I've seen. Mr. Holloway, your mother's behavior toward your wife was cruel. Your failure to protect your wife from that cruelty was a failure of your duty as a husband. Your apparent willingness to allow another woman to step into your wife's role, whether intentionally or not, demonstrates poor judgment. Dean's face reddened. I'm granting the divorce. Mrs. Holloway will have primary physical custody. Mr. Holloway will have supervised visitation every other weekend until he completes a co-parenting class and family counseling. Furthermore, Mr. Holloway's mother is prohibited from being present during any visitation. If Mr. Holloway can demonstrate over the next 6 months that he's capable of prioritizing his daughter's needs and maintaining appropriate boundaries with his extended family, we can revisit the custody arrangement. Dean's lawyer stood. Your Honor, that's extremely harsh. Mr. Holloway had multiple opportunities to choose his wife and daughter over his mother's manipulation. He failed each time. I'm not punishing him. I'm protecting a child who deserves a father who will put her first. The gavel came down. I walked out of that courtroom with primary custody, the house, and child support. Dean walked out with supervised visits and a court-mandated therapy appointment. My mother-in-law tried to approach me in the parking lot. My lawyer stepped between us. Mrs. Holloway has a restraining order against you, she said calmly. I'd suggest you keep your distance. That's my granddaughter. She spat at me. You can't keep me from my granddaughter. Watch me, I said. 6 months passed. Dean completed his co-parenting class and started therapy. His therapist noted in her report that he had significant enmeshment issues with his mother and difficulty establishing boundaries with his family of origin. No kidding. He petitioned the court to modify the custody arrangement. My lawyer and I showed up prepared for a fight, but something had changed. Dean looked different, tired, but clearer somehow. His lawyer presented evidence that he'd been in therapy twice a week, that he'd stopped attending his mother's weekly family dinners, that he'd had several conversations with his mother about her behavior, conversations that hadn't gone well but that he'd had anyway. My client has done everything the court asked of him, his lawyer said. He's completed parenting classes. He's in ongoing therapy. He's established boundaries with his family. He's requesting unsupervised visitation and a more balanced custody schedule. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Holloway, do you have any objections? I could have said yes. Part of me wanted to, but I thought about my daughter, who cried after visits because she missed her daddy, who asked why she couldn't sleep at daddy's house like other kids did with their divorced parents. I'd like to see documentation from his therapist, I said. And I want it written into the order that his mother is still not allowed at visitations. If he can agree to that, then I have no objection to unsupervised visits. Dean nodded immediately. Agreed. Completely agreed. The judge modified the custody order. Every other weekend, unsupervised. Wednesday night dinners, alternating holidays. My daughter was thrilled. Dean came to pick her up for his first unsupervised weekend looking nervous. I know you don't owe me anything, he said at my doorway, but thank you for not fighting this. I'm not doing this for you, I said. I'm doing it for her. She deserves a relationship with her father. I know. And I'm going to prove I can be the father she deserves. He'd been doing okay for the past year. Our daughter came back from his place happy. He never mentioned his mother, never pushed for me to reconsider the boundaries. He'd moved into his own apartment, a small 2-bedroom 20 minutes away. He'd learned to braid our daughter's hair. He'd learned her bedtime routine. He'd shown up. But I still didn't trust him. Not completely. Then one Friday, he brought her back early. She ran inside to show me a picture she'd drawn, leaving us alone on the porch. My mother showed up at my apartment last week, he said quietly. My whole body tensed. And I didn't let her in. She stood outside my door for 40 minutes, crying and yelling about how I'd chosen you over her, how I'd abandoned my family, how she was the victim in all of this. What did you do? I told her that she'd lost access to her granddaughter because of her own actions, that I'd lost my marriage because I'd enabled those actions, and that if she ever tried to manipulate me into choosing her over my daughter again, she'd lose me too. Then I closed the door and called my therapist. I stared at him. You really said that? I should have said it 6 years ago. I should have said it the moment she invited Bree to that vacation. I should have defended you every single time she made one of those little comments. He looked at his shoes. My therapist helped me see that I was so afraid of my mother's disapproval that I sacrificed everything else. My marriage, my self-respect, almost my daughter. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know that I finally got it. I finally understood what I did to you, what I let them do to you. He met my eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. All of it. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. He left. I stood on the porch for a while, processing. My sister-in-law, Dean's brother's wife, the one who'd recorded everything, called me that night. Did Dean tell you about the confrontation with his mom? She asked. He did. It was brutal. She called him ungrateful, said he was brainwashed by you and his therapist. His dad tried to intervene, but Dean held firm. He told them both that they needed to respect his boundaries or lose him completely. How do you know all this? Because they called my husband immediately after, trying to get him to talk sense into Dean. My husband told them to back off. It caused a huge fight. We're not going to the family Christmas this year. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. We should have done this years ago. That family is toxic. They treat their daughters-in-law like servants and their sons like property. I'm glad Dean finally woke up. I just wish it hadn't taken losing you to make it happen. After we hung up, I thought about Dean at 18, starting college, meeting Bree, the perfect girlfriend who never pushed back, never challenged his mother, never asked him to choose. And then I thought about how Bree left him anyway, married someone else, and only came back when her marriage failed. I thought about how I'd been different, how I'd asked questions, set boundaries, expected respect, how that had been threatening to a family that operated on control and compliance. And I thought about how Dean had tried to keep everyone happy by choosing no one, which meant choosing them by default. My daughter asked me a few weeks later if Daddy was going to live with us again. No, sweetheart, I said gently. Mommy and Daddy are better as friends who both love you very much. But Daddy seems sad. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that can't be fixed. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you. She thought about this. Did Daddy make you sad? He did, but not on purpose. And now he's trying to be a better daddy to you, which makes me happy. She seemed satisfied with that answer. Kids are resilient. More resilient than adults sometimes. 3 months later, Dean showed up at my door unannounced. He looked agitated. She hired a lawyer, he said. My mother. She's suing for grandparents' rights. My blood ran cold. Can she do that? Apparently in Indiana, grandparents can petition for visitation if they can prove it's in the child's best interest. Her lawyer is arguing that I've alienated her from her granddaughter under your influence. That's insane. I know. But we need to fight this together. Her lawyer is going to try to paint me as unstable, and you as controlling. They're going to bring up the divorce, the custody battle. everything. I called my lawyer immediately. She'd already been served with a petition. This is going to be expensive, she warned. Grandparents' rights cases are complicated, but given the history, we have a strong defense. The hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. My mother-in-law showed up with her lawyer, her husband, and 3 character witnesses. People from her church who testified about what a devoted grandmother she'd always been. My lawyer called Dean to the stand first. Mr. Holloway, can you describe your mother's behavior during your marriage? Dean took a breath. This was it. The moment of truth. My mother was emotionally manipulative and controlling, he said clearly. She undermined my wife constantly. She invited my ex-girlfriend to a family vacation without telling me, specifically to cause conflict. She recorded conversations designed to push my wife out of the family. And when my wife left that vacation because of how uncomfortable the situation was, my mother told my 3-year-old daughter that her mother had abandoned her. His mother gasped audibly. Her lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Why didn't you stop these behaviors? My lawyer asked. Because I was a coward, Dean said. I was so conditioned to seek my mother's approval that I couldn't see how destructive she was being. It cost me my marriage, and it nearly cost me my relationship with my daughter. My lawyer played the recordings again, all of them. The judge's expression grew more disturbed with each one. When it was his mother's lawyer's turn, he tried to argue that the recordings were taken out of context, that Dean had been brainwashed by me and his therapist, that a child needed her grandmother's influence. My lawyer stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Holloway, in one of these recordings, you told your 3-year-old granddaughter that her mother had left her. Is that correct? I was just upset, she said defensively. I didn't mean, you told a frightened child that her mother had abandoned her knowing it wasn't true. Yes or no? I was trying to comfort her. Yes or no, Mrs. Holloway? Yes, but... And you invited your son's ex-girlfriend to a family vacation specifically to cause problems in his marriage. Is that correct? I thought they were having problems already. You created problems where none existed. You invited another woman to insert herself into your son's family. You actively worked to destroy your son's marriage. And now you want this court to grant you access to the child you've already proven you're willing to manipulate and hurt to get what you want. I love my granddaughter. You love controlling your son. Your granddaughter is just another way to maintain that control. The hearing lasted 3 hours. At the end, the judge looked exhausted. I've presided over many grandparents' rights cases, he said. Most involve grandparents who've been wrongfully cut off from loving relationships with their grandchildren. This is not that case. My mother-in-law's lawyer started to speak. The judge held up a hand. Mrs. Holloway, the evidence presented here shows a pattern of manipulation, boundary violations, and emotional abuse. You didn't just fail to support your son's marriage, you actively sabotaged it. You used your granddaughter as a tool in your campaign to control your son's life. And when faced with consequences for your actions, rather than reflecting on your behavior, you've doubled down. Your Honor, my client has rights. Your client has demonstrated that she poses an emotional risk to this child. Petition denied. Furthermore, I'm extending the existing restraining order to include any attempts to contact the child through third parties or social media. Mrs. Holloway, if you want a relationship with your granddaughter someday, I suggest you spend some serious time in therapy addressing your behavior. Until then, you're to have no contact. She started crying. Her husband put his arm around her. Her lawyer looked defeated. Dean testified against his own mother to protect our daughter. He'd finally chosen. Outside the courthouse, he looked shell-shocked. I can't believe I just did that. You did the right thing, I said. She's going to disown me. She already did. She just didn't tell you yet. He laughed bitterly. My dad won't even look at me. My sister isn't talking to me. The only person in my family who's still speaking to me is my brother, and that's because his wife made him choose her over them. I'm sorry. Don't be. You tried to tell me for years. I just wasn't ready to listen. He looked at me. I know we're not getting back together. I know I destroyed that. But I want you to know that I'm grateful for showing me what real love looks like, for protecting our daughter when I wouldn't, for being stronger than I was. I felt tears prick my eyes. You're being strong now. That's what matters. Over the next year, Dean continued therapy. He built a life separate from his family, made new friends, started dating someone who seemed nice, though I kept my distance. Our daughter thrived with the new arrangement. My mother-in-law tried 3 more times to circumvent the restraining order. Once through a birthday card sent to my address. Once through a message passed through a mutual acquaintance. Once through a fake social media account that tried to follow my daughter's private Instagram that I'd made for family photos. Each time, I documented it and reported it to the court. Each time, the consequences got more severe. After the 3rd violation, the judge threatened her with jail time if she tried again. She finally stopped. 2 years after the divorce, my daughter asked me about her grandmother. Why doesn't Grandma come to my birthdays? She asked. I thought carefully about how to answer. Grandma made some choices that hurt people. Sometimes when grown-ups hurt people, they have to stay away until they can learn to be kind. Did she hurt you? She did. And she hurt Daddy too. Is that why you and Daddy don't live together? That's part of it, sweetie. But Daddy and I just weren't right for each other. It's nobody's fault. Sometimes things just don't work out. She seemed to accept this. Kids are perceptive, but they also trust the adults in their lives to handle the complicated stuff. I'd started dating someone new, a man named Peter who taught high school English and had never been married. He was patient with my boundaries, kind to my daughter, and had no interest in rushing anything. Dean met him once when we had an overlap during a pickup. They shook hands awkwardly. Dean looked at Peter for a long moment, then nodded. Treat them well, was all he said. Peter looked confused. I plan to? After Dean left, I explained the history, all of it. Peter listened without judgment. That explains why you're so cautious, he said. For what it's worth, I have no crazy ex-girlfriends, and my mother lives in Arizona and minds her own business. I laughed. That might be the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. 3 years after the divorce, Dean got remarried to a woman named Claire who worked as a physical therapist and had 2 kids from a previous marriage. She seemed stable, grounded. At the wedding, which I didn't attend but saw photos of, his mother was notably absent. She didn't come? I asked him when he told me about it. I didn't invite her, or my dad, or my sister, just my brother and his wife and a few friends. That must have been hard. It was necessary. Claire deserves to start our marriage without that toxicity, and her kids have been through enough with their dad. They don't need my mother's drama on top of it. I was impressed. The dean I'd married would never have had the spine to do that. Our daughter liked Claire, liked her kids, adjusted to having a blended family on her dad's side while having her stable, drama-free life with me and eventually with Peter. 4 years after the divorce, Peter asked me to marry him. We'd been dating for a year and a half. He proposed at home, just the two of us, with a ring he'd designed himself. "I'm not trying to replace anyone," he said. "And I know this family has been through a lot, but I love you, and I love your daughter, and I want to build something real with you, if you'll have me." I said yes. Dean was happy for me when I told him. "You deserve this," he said. "You deserve someone who chooses you first." At the wedding, my daughter was the flower girl. Dean walked her down the aisle since she was part of the ceremony, but he wasn't part of the family anymore. It was strange and beautiful and complicated. In my vows, I didn't mention the past. I focused on the future, on the man who'd shown up consistently, who'd respected my boundaries, who'd never asked me to choose between him and myself. After the ceremony, I looked around at the people who'd shown up. My family, true friends, Dean's brother and sister-in-law who'd become friends of their own, people who'd supported me through the worst time of my life and celebrated with me now. My mother-in-law wasn't there, would never be there. That relationship was dead and buried, and I didn't mourn it. 5 years after the divorce, my daughter was 8, old enough to start asking harder questions. "Mom, why don't I have a grandma on Dad's side?" I'd been preparing for this question for years. Grandma made choices that hurt our family. Sometimes people we love do things that mean we can't be around them anymore. Like what? I thought about how to explain this to an 8-year-old. "She was mean to me when I was married to your dad, and she said things to you that weren't true, things that could have hurt you. So the judge decided it was safer for you not to see her. Will I ever meet her? I don't know, honey. That's up to her. If she ever decides to get help and change her behavior, maybe someday. But right now, she's not safe to be around." My daughter processed this. "Is she why you and Daddy got divorced?" "She's part of why. But there were other reasons too. Dad and I just weren't good together. But you're friends now." "We are, because we both love you, and we both learned to be better people." She hugged me. "I'm glad you married Peter." "Me too, baby." 6 years after the divorce, I got a letter, handwritten, addressed to me, with a return address I didn't recognize. Inside was a 3-page letter from my former mother-in-law. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won. The letter started with an apology. A real one. Not the kind where someone apologizes for how you feel. She acknowledged what she'd done, how she'd manipulated Dean, how she'd invited Bree to hurt me, how she'd tried to replace me as my daughter's mother. She wrote about going to therapy, something her husband had insisted on after the restraining order, about slowly realizing how controlling she'd been, how she'd treated her sons like possessions instead of people, how she'd driven away both of her daughters-in-law and didn't understand why, until her therapist broke it down. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. What I did to you, what I did to Dean, what I almost did to your daughter. I'm horrified by my own behavior." She ended the letter with, "You were a good wife to my son, a good mother to my granddaughter, and I destroyed both of those relationships because I couldn't let go of control. I'm sorry for all of it. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be happy." I read the letter 3 times, showed it to Peter, called my therapist, and read it to her. "What do you want to do with this?" My therapist asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to respond. Part of me wants to burn it. Those are both valid responses. What feels right to you?" I thought about it for a week. Then I wrote back. My letter was shorter, 1 page. "Thank you for your apology. I accept it. That doesn't mean I'm ready to have you in my life, or my daughter's life, but I appreciate you taking accountability. I hope therapy continues to help you. I hope you can rebuild relationships with your sons, but that's not my responsibility anymore. I wish you well." I mailed it and felt lighter, not healed, not ready for reconciliation, but lighter. 7 years after the divorce, Dean's father died. Heart attack, sudden and unexpected. Dean called me crying. "I don't know what to do," he said. "Mom's a mess. And I don't know if I should bring the girls to the funeral." "Of course you should," I said. "He was their grandfather. They deserve to say goodbye." "But the restraining order was about protecting them from your mother's behavior. This is different. This is about grief. I'll come too if you want, to help with the girls and make sure everything stays appropriate." He sounded relieved. "Would you?" At the funeral, my former mother-in-law looked broken, older than I remembered. She saw me, saw our daughter, and her face crumpled. But she didn't approach, just nodded from across the room. After the service, she asked Dean if she could say hello to her granddaughter. Dean looked at me. "Supervised," I said, and brief. We stood nearby while she knelt down in front of our 8-year-old daughter. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, her voice shaking. "You probably don't remember me. I'm your dad's mom." My daughter looked uncertain. "Hi. You've gotten so big, so beautiful. You look just like your dad did at your age." Silence. "I'm sorry I haven't been around. I made some mistakes. Grown-up mistakes. But I want you to know that I think about you all the time." "Okay," my daughter said, clearly uncomfortable. "That's enough," I said gently. "Say goodbye." "Goodbye, Grandma," my daughter said dutifully. My former mother-in-law stood up, tears streaming down her face. She looked at me. "Thank you for letting me see her." I nodded. We left. In the car, my daughter asked questions. Who was that lady? Why hadn't she met her before? Why was she crying? I answered as honestly as I could. "She's your dad's mom. You met her when you were very little, but she made choices that meant she couldn't be around you. She's crying because she misses you, and because Grandpa died. Sometimes people cry about more than one thing at once." That seemed to satisfy her. 8 years after the divorce, Claire called me, Dean's new wife. "I don't know if this is weird," she said, but I wanted to thank you. For what? For holding Dean accountable, for making him choose. He told me everything, about the vacation, about Bree, about his mother. If you hadn't left, if you hadn't forced him to face what he was doing, he'd still be that person, and I probably would have ended up where you were. I didn't know what to say. He's a good father to your daughter, she continued, and he's a good husband to me, and a good stepfather to my kids. But he wasn't always that person. You made him become that person by refusing to accept anything less. I didn't do it for him, I said. I did it for me, and for my daughter. I know. That's what makes it more powerful. You didn't try to fix him, you just refused to be treated that way anymore. And he had to either change or lose everything. After we hung up, I thought about the woman I'd been 8 years ago. Desperate, hurt, angry, driving home alone while my husband's family played happy on a beach. I thought about how I could have stayed, could have swallowed it, could have spent the next 20 years slowly disappearing. And I thought about how I'd chosen myself instead, how I'd fought for my daughter, how I demanded respect even when it cost me everything. My mother-in-law never tried to circumvent the restraining order again, never showed up unannounced. Sent birthday cards for my daughter through Dean, which I reviewed before deciding whether to give them to her. Usually I did. They were appropriate, kind, short. 9 years after the divorce, my daughter was 10, double digits, getting ready for middle school. Mom, she said one night, can I ask you something? Always. Dad's mom, Grandma. Can I meet her? Like, really meet her? Not just at a funeral? My first instinct was no, absolutely not. But I caught myself. Why do you want to meet her? Because she's part of my family, and Dad says she's different now. And I'm old enough to understand that people make mistakes. I called my therapist, had an emergency session, talked through my fears, my anger, my protective instincts. What's the worst that could happen? My therapist asked. She could manipulate her, hurt her, turn her against me. Your daughter is 10, she's smart, she knows her history, and you'll be there to protect her if needed. What's the best that could happen? She could have a relationship with her grandmother, a healthy one. Is that worth the risk? I thought about it for a long time. I don't know, but ultimately, it wasn't my decision alone. I talked to Dean, to Claire, to Peter. Everyone agreed that if my daughter wanted to try, we should let her, with boundaries, with supervision, with the understanding that if things went wrong, we'd pull back immediately. I invited my former mother-in-law to coffee, just the two of us. Neutral territory. She looked nervous. Thank you for meeting with me. My daughter wants to know you, I said. I'm here to decide if that's safe. I understand. I need to know that you've actually changed, that this isn't a manipulation, because if you hurt my daughter the way you hurt me, I will destroy you. Legally, socially, completely. She didn't flinch. I deserve that. And I promise you, I've changed. I'm still in therapy. I've cut off friends who enabled my behavior. I've apologized to Dean, to his brother, to both of their wives. I've tried to make amends wherever I can. Why should I believe you? Because I have nothing to gain by lying. The restraining order is still in effect. You hold all the power here. I'm not asking for anything except a chance to know my granddaughter. On your terms. With your rules. However you want to do this. I studied her face. Looked for signs of the woman who'd orchestrated that vacation 9 years ago. Didn't find her. We'll start with supervised visits. 1 hour, once a month. Me or Dean present the entire time. No gifts. No trying to buy her affection. No bad-mouthing me or Peter or anyone else in her life. No discussion of the past unless she brings it up. If you violate any of these rules, we're done, permanently. I agree to all of it. And if at any point she wants to stop, we stop. No guilt trips, no making her feel bad. This is about what she needs, not what you want. I understand. The first visit was awkward. My daughter didn't know what to say. My mother-in-law tried too hard. But there were no disasters, no manipulation, just stilted conversation and uncomfortable silences. The second visit was slightly better. They talked about school, about my daughter's interests, about neutral things. By the 6th visit, they were laughing together. My daughter showed her a dance she'd learned. My mother-in-law asked genuine questions and listened to the answers. I watched from across the coffee shop, alert for any red flags. Found none. She's different, Dean said, watching them together. I barely recognize her. People can change, I said, when they want to badly enough. 10 years after the divorce, my daughter asked if Grandma could come to her birthday party. Are you sure? I asked. Yeah, she's been nice. And Dad says she's trying really hard, and it feels weird not inviting her when she's my grandma. I talked to Peter, to my therapist, to Dean and Claire. It's her birthday, Peter said. If she wants her grandmother there, maybe it's time. The party was at our house. Extended family, friends from school, and one nervous-looking former mother-in-law who brought an age-appropriate gift and didn't try to take over. She helped clean up after, thanked me for including her, left when the party ended without overstaying her welcome. How was that? Peter asked after everyone left. Weird, I said, but okay. Better than okay. My daughter hugged me. Thanks for letting her come, Mom. You're welcome, sweetheart. Life moved on. My daughter grew, started middle school, made friends and lost friends and figured out who she was. Dean remained a steady presence. Claire became someone I actually liked. Peter and I built a life that felt solid and real. My former mother-in-law stayed on the periphery, present but not invasive. A grandmother, but not the controlling matriarch she'd once been. One day, about 11 years after the divorce, she asked to speak with me privately. I wanted to thank you, she said, for giving me a second chance with my granddaughter. I know I didn't deserve it. You're right. You didn't. I spent so many years believing that love meant control, that being a good mother meant making decisions for my sons, that protecting them meant protecting them from anyone who challenged our family dynamic. I was wrong about all of it. I didn't respond. You were good for Dean, she continued. You challenged him, pushed him to be better, and I hated you for it because it meant I was losing control. I see that now. That's not an excuse. I know, I'm not offering excuses. I'm just trying to explain what I couldn't explain back then. I was threatened by you because you were everything I taught myself not to be. Strong, independent, unwilling to compromise yourself, and instead of admiring that, I tried to destroy it. You almost succeeded. I know, and I'm sorrier than I can ever express. You didn't deserve what I did to you. Your daughter didn't deserve what I tried to do to her. And Dean didn't deserve having to choose between his mother and his family. We sat in silence for a moment. I can't forgive you, I said finally. Not completely. What you did was too cruel, too calculated. I don't expect forgiveness, but I can accept your apology, and I can appreciate that you've done the work to change. That counts for something. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. 12 years after the divorce, my daughter graduated from middle school. Both of her families showed up. Dean and Claire and her step-siblings. Me and Peter. My parents. Dean's brother and his wife. And yes, her grandmother. We took photos, celebrated together. It wasn't perfect. There was still tension, still history, but it was functional, respectful, good enough. That night, my daughter thanked me. For what? I asked. For protecting me when I was little. Dad told me what happened, what Grandma did, why you left the vacation, all of it. He shouldn't have. I asked him to tell me. I wanted to know, and I wanted to say thank you for being strong enough to leave, for not letting anyone treat you that way. You taught me that I don't have to accept bad treatment just because it's from family. I hugged her tight. That's the most important lesson I could ever teach you. I know. I see how you are with Peter, how he treats you with respect, how you expect respect. It's different from what I see at other people's houses sometimes. Their parents just take whatever treatment comes their way, but not you. You demand better. Everyone should demand better. I will, because you showed me how. Looking back now, 13 years after that vacation, I sometimes wonder what my life would look like if I'd stayed. If I'd swallowed my pride and finished the week. If I'd let Dean's mother keep chipping away at my dignity. I know I wouldn't be married to Peter. Wouldn't be this version of myself. Wouldn't have taught my daughter that self-respect isn't negotiable. The cost was enormous. A marriage ended. A family fractured. Years of legal battles and therapy and explaining to a small child why her family looked different from other families. But the alternative would have cost more. My sense of self, my dignity, my daughter's understanding of what healthy relationships look like. Sometimes people ask if I regret how I handled things, if I should have tried harder to make it work, and I tell them the truth. I have many regrets, but leaving isn't one of them. Dean and I are cordial now, friendly even. We co-parent effectively. He's become the father our daughter deserves, the husband Claire deserves. But he's not the man I married. That man chose his mother over his wife. This man learned to choose himself, which means he can finally choose his relationships properly. My former mother-in-law will never be my favorite person. I'll never fully trust her. The wounds are too deep, but she's tried. She's changed, and that's worth something. Bree, she got remarried to someone else and moved to California. I saw her at a wedding once, years later. We didn't speak, just acknowledged each other with a nod. I imagine she tells a different version of that vacation story, one where she was just an innocent bystander caught in someone else's drama. Maybe that's true. Maybe she was a pawn in my mother-in-law's game, or maybe she was a willing participant. I'll never know, and I don't care to find out. The beach house we rented that week burned down 3 years ago. Fire of unknown origin. When Dean told me, we both laughed darkly. Some things deserve to burn. My daughter is 13 now, a teenager, starting to push boundaries and test limits. She's confident, strong-willed, unafraid to speak her mind. Sometimes she fights with me, tells me I'm too strict or too protective or too something, and I smile, because she's brave enough to challenge me. She's not afraid to push back. She won't be the kind of woman who swallows her voice to keep the peace. That vacation 13 years ago changed the trajectory of 3 lives. Mine, Dean's, and our daughter's. I wouldn't wish that week on anyone. The betrayal, the humiliation, the anger, but I also wouldn't undo it, because that week showed me exactly who I was married to, exactly who his family was, exactly what my future would hold if I stayed. And it gave me the courage to demand better, to walk away from a man who couldn't choose me, to fight for my daughter when no one else would, to rebuild my life on my own terms. People tell me I'm strong, that I did the right thing, that they admire how I handled everything. But strength isn't a choice, it's a necessity. I didn't feel strong when I packed my car that morning. I felt broken, humiliated, scared. But I packed anyway. I drove away anyway. I fought back anyway. And somewhere along the way, necessity became strength. This is what I tell my daughter when she asks for advice about boys or friends or complicated situations. You teach people how to treat you. Every time you accept bad treatment, you're teaching them it's okay to treat you that way. So don't accept it. Walk away from people who don't respect you. Set boundaries. Demand better. It will be hard. People will call you dramatic, overreacting, difficult. Let them. Your dignity is worth more than their approval. And someday you'll look back and realize that the hardest choice you made was also the right one. That vacation 13 years ago taught me that lesson. The expensive way, the painful way. But I learned it. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure my daughter never has to learn it the way I did. Because that's what mothers do. We take the hits. We learn the lessons. And we pass down the wisdom so our children can avoid the same pain. My mother-in-law didn't do that for Dean. She taught him that manipulation was love, that control was protection, that choosing yourself was betrayal. It took losing his marriage for him to unlearn those lessons, to see them for what they were, to choose differently. I'm grateful he finally did, for our daughter's sake, for his own sake. But I'm more grateful I didn't wait for him to change, that I chose myself first, that I showed my daughter what that looks like. The beach house is gone now, burned to ashes. The photos from that week are deleted. The memories are fading, but the lessons remain, carved into my bones, written into my daughter's understanding of the world. You are worth more than someone else's comfort. Your dignity is not negotiable. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. That's what I did 13 years ago. Packed my car, buckled in my daughter, and drove away from a family that would have slowly erased me. I've never looked back with regret, only relief. And when people ask me if I miss Dean, I tell them the truth. I don't miss who he was. I'm glad he became who he is now. But I don't regret that his growth came at the cost of our marriage. Some people need to lose everything to learn what matters. Dean was one of those people. I wasn't willing to be collateral damage in his learning process, so I removed myself, protected my daughter, and built a life worth living. That vacation was supposed to be a week of family bonding. Instead, it became the week I finally saw clearly what I'd been living with: the manipulation, the disrespect, the complete disregard for my place in the family. And I decided I was worth more than that. My daughter deserved better than that. Our future was worth fighting for. So I fought. For custody, for respect, for boundaries, for basic human dignity. And I won. Not because I was stronger, but because I refused to accept anything less. That's my advice to anyone in a similar situation. Don't accept less. Don't wait for them to change. Don't hope things will get better. Protect yourself, protect your children, and walk away from anyone who treats your dignity as negotiable. You might lose the marriage, the family, the life you thought you'd have, but you'll gain yourself. And that's worth more than anything you could lose. 13 years later, I'm still glad I drove away that morning. Still grateful I had the courage to choose myself. Still proud of the example I set for my daughter. Because every day she sees what it looks like to be with someone who respects you, who chooses you, who treats you as an equal partner. She'll never settle for less. Because I showed her she doesn't have to. And that makes every difficult moment, every legal battle, every tear-filled night worth it. My mother-in-law announced on day 1 of our vacation that she invited my husband's ex to make things more fun. I left on day 3, filed for divorce 2 days later, and rebuilt my life from the ground up. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and the best decision I ever made.